Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
The Bears.
Because of the way they play the nickel corner here, and the nickel corner plays 88-85% of the snaps. He's got to be like part linebacker.
The Bears.
When you're in a scouting room, there's going to be differences of opinion.
The Bears.
Once coaches get involved, of course, they've got their own opinions about what fits best for what they want to do, and that could be drastically different than what the scouts say.
Well, you're looking at traits, and remember when he tested very, very well.
The Bears.
One thing good about Kevin, he's been with two other organizations, as well as being the commissioner of the Big Ten. He's been around.
The Bears.
With Greg Olson, Jerry didn't want to get rid of him. I didn't want to get rid of him. Nobody wanted to get rid of him. One guy wanted to get rid of him, Mike Martz, because Mike Martz didn't know what the hell to do with him. We tried to talk Lovey out of hiring Mike Martz for a month and a half. He's playing zone, but number one, he doesn't get enough depth with the drop. But who the hell's Gilbert? How many times does a 305, 310-pound defensive tackle drop into coverage, especially in a key situation?
The Bears.
Greg, why are teams wrong on quarterback evaluation so often?
Number one, it's a hard position to evaluate. There's probably not as many real good quarterback evaluators as there needs to be.
The Bears. The Bears. The Bears.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of GTF Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia, and just to let you know, we have got a heck of a week of programming here at the Barroom Network. The best way to stay on top of stuff is, of course, to subscribe, but I'm also asking you to share the programming with others, other Bear fans, and just people in general, so that we can shoot up some numbers and we can get some people paid around here finally. So with that, I'm going to bring in the guy who we are all here to hear talk about football, and he is, of course, Greg Gabriel. Greg, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Now, you're still battling the after effects of COVID a little bit, so thank you for playing hurt today.
Well, you got to do what you got to do, right?
There you go, brother.
Before I forget, I teased it on X this morning. A week from today, Dane Brugler will be on as our guest.
That's
Dane
right.
We might start a few minutes late because Dane can't come on until 11:30.
Right.
So maybe we'll start at 11:15. We'll let y'all know.
Yeah, depending on what the news is. If we've got a half hour of stuff to share before Dane gets, maybe we'll start at the same time. But either way, Dane himself will be on at 11:30 next Monday. I am really looking forward to that. He's one of our favorite hosts, or guests, I should say, that we've ever had.
It's funny because the lead-in, I talk about the coaches, and then he goes, and once the coaches get involved, and the funny thing is that in meetings they start to get involved like today.
Yeah. Okay.
At most places, the Bears could have started last Friday or Thursday. I don't know. They were at the league meetings. Poles and Coach Johnson were at the league meetings at least through Tuesday. They were done Tuesday. Usually they go into Wednesday, so they could have started them at the end of the week. I don't know, but most people will start their meetings today, lead right up. The scouts stay there right through the draft. They'll go home. Easter weekend is the weekend before the draft. They'll go home for Easter, then come back, and it's fun day, long hours, but there's a lot of interaction between the coaching staff and the scouts, the personnel department, because this is really the first time as a group that the coaches really present their case for certain players. Now, one thing it was either Poles or Coach Johnson, I think it was Johnson, said they've had sessions where Poles, Johnson, the coordinator, position coach, have watched tape of all the top players at the position. Lovey, Jerry, myself, coordinator, position coach, we did that all the time, going through maybe 15, 18 players in a day or an afternoon, say, looking at what we called profile tapes, which showed the good and the bad. It wasn't, the scout would make up the profile tape and you might have 200 plays on it, but it shows you exactly what the player was. So you don't have to show every mundane play, and in some positions, like a corner or something like that, there's plays where they just don't take part in it. So you don't need to see that. So offensive, defensive linemen, different story. They're involved every play. So, it's a fun exercise to do. And I'm glad to hear that they were doing the same thing. Because when you start to look at players back to back to back to back like that, you can see the separation between player A, player B, and player C.
All right. So you walk into Hallis Hall today. You're the general manager or director of scouting, what have you. And you go to the room where the big board is. What does it look like today? And how will it look like over the next several days leading up to the draft?
Well, I can't speak to what their board looks like. Ours, first day of meetings, was blank. Nobody on it. And we would do it by position.
Okay.
And we'd start off with need positions. So just so you're real fresh, because as meetings go on, your mind starts to wear down a little bit. So you want to get the need positions out of the way first. But you go in and first of all, too, you got to back up. Today's first day of the off-season program. So the coaches are involved with the players a little bit, too. So you got to work things kind of hand in hand. Like coaches are probably working with the players and stuff this morning and classroom stuff, because you can't go out on the field with the players for another 2 weeks. And that's the mini camp will be the first time. And, they'll be doing weightlifting and stuff, but they can do classroom stuff. So that could probably be in the morning, meetings in the afternoon, into the evening. It's long hours, but it's a lot of fun.
Long hours. So what are you talking about? 16-hour days?
I mean, that would be up to, we'd go till 8 at night. And then guys you'd stay longer. Just for meetings, we'd go to about 8 at night.
So a question that we've talked about before, but I want to ask it again. Maybe I'll try to ask it in a slightly different version, is we know what the Bears' needs are. But when it comes down to having to choose between two players who have been similarly scored, how do you account for the who you pick? What are some of the criteria? Do you look at the depth of the position in the draft? Do you look at, what your roster is and what contracts are there for the players already slotted into the positions? What things do you account for when you are trying to determine this player over this player, despite the fact that they're similarly scored?
It's a good question. Not hard to answer, but it could be a lengthy answer if I wanted to do it that way. There's a lot of factors that will determine that. And part of it is, you've got your board set up, and we never did it best to worst. When I was with Chicago, we just did it by best to worst by position. And then we had, as I've said many times before, we had A-level players, B-level players, and C-level players. And A-level players were players that you take in the first and second round. B were in the third and fourth. C was the rest of the draft. Theoretically, you hope you'd get a B or an A-level player in the third round and a B-level player in the fourth and maybe even the fifth, depending how, because every board's different. It just depends how it plays out. But during your meeting, when you're going over it position by position and you're ranking the players, you're basically prioritizing the players. So how you would take them. So you're talking about player A, you're talking about player A or player B. And if you put player A higher on the board than player B, let's say they got the same grade, but you have the one guy his card is set above the other one, then theoretically, that's the decision you made. And a lot of times you discuss that. You might say, okay, we're in the second round and we got a choice between this guy and this guy. Which one we taking? And that's all part of what goes on during these meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And then, obviously you got to watch, there's going to be, I said this 1,000 times, and I think this year it's going to be more so than any year in a long time, in that, I said that there's like 6 blue players in this draft, one that's a semi-blue. So we got the 6 blues are in no particular order: Hunter, Genty, and Warren on offense, Carter, Graham, and Walker on defense. And then Ward, the quarterback from Miami, is kind of like maybe a blue, maybe he's a blue-red, whatever, purple. But they should be the first people taken theoretically. Now, what's funny is, in talking to people, I had posted that on X last week. And then the next day, DJ comes out with his top 50, his new top 50, and his first 6 were the 6 blues.
The same.
And I sent him a text. I go, this is what people told me. I go, it's funny, we must be talking to the same people. He said back to me, he goes, or we're talking to the wrong ones. But anyway, then I've got something on over the weekend, and there was a Todd McShay interview.
Uh-huh.
So McShay says there's 6 blue players, and these are the 6. So generally speaking, the consensus across the league is those are the top 6 players in the draft. After that, and Paul said this last week at the owners meeting. I was going to ask you to get that clip so you could play it, but I forgot. He said last week, he goes, well, you got the top players, and then you're still in single digits, and then you can go to the next 30, 40, or 50, and they're all the same. So that, because of that, there's a little difference in grade, but because of that, who the hell knows how this thing's going to work? People are going to rate one guy better than another guy. Mm-hmm. The Bears' 9th player could be another team's 25th player.
Right.
Another team's 30th player could be the Bears, or another team's 8th player could be the Bears' 30th. Either way, it works both ways. And so, people say to me, well, why would somebody want to trade up? And I think that a draft like this leads to more teams wanting to trade up, because you kind of eyeball a specific player. And you say, I got to get this guy. And you're trying to think, okay, you've got team needs for every, listed. Your pro department does that. They set up the team needs for each team. So you're going, okay, they need this, this, and this. Well, New Orleans could take this guy. So, that's going to leave us with this, or maybe we got to get in front of New Orleans to be able to get this one player, because they might take him. So that's why these trades can happen. If in fact you just fall in love, so to speak, with one particular player.
Right. Which happens often. All right, you mentioned Ryan Poles. I didn't pull that soundbite that you referred to, but I did pull this one. He was recently on the Hogue and John show, and they asked him what every Bears fan has been thinking, what about this left tackle position? And he started his response by talking about Braxton Jones and saying that Braxton is at Hallishaw. He's working out, and then he continued.
Yeah, no, he's busting his butt in rehab. See him in the building all the time, trying to get back. And our training staff has been outstanding with that as well. So I'm confident he's going to get back and back to form. But that's definitely a situation when you look at the draft and as we move forward, to bring another tackle is definitely something that we would consider to do. But I'm also excited about Karan and his development. So it is a little bit of puts us in a pickle.
Puts us in a pickle. So
now I got to say this.
Uh-huh.
That's the first time and probably 5 sound bites
Uh-huh.
that he's ever said it was a possibility.
Yeah.
The other ones have always been, we're happy with these guys. And Johnson said it too. We're happy with these guys. And people say, well, it's a lying season. You never lie about your own players.
Ooh, that's
You
interesting.
can't lie about your own players because they'll come back and bite you in the ass.
That is interesting.
So you can lie about certain players in the draft, things of that effect, but don't say you like a player on your team a real lot when you don't like them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, leave that out of the conversation.
Yeah.
The player's going to say, wait a minute, here, you said this.
Right. That's a good point. Now, of those 6 players, somebody, I think it was Samo, said that it's too bad Josh Simmons was hurt because he would have been one of those blue chip players.
There's a lot of issues coming out with him recently.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to ask. Tell me
In
about
fact, if you
what you're
look
hearing.
at DJ's top 50, he's got Simmons like 28, 20. I don't have it in front of me, but it's in the low 20s or high 20s, whatever you want to say it. And why? It's because there's issues.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what any of those issues are aside from the knee injury that he had?
Well, I mean, that's one thing, and who knows? Remember, they're saying, oh, he's going to do everything at the pro day. He lifted and he did a couple little movement things, basically in slow motion, and that was it. Why? Because he's not ready, and it's going to be a determination of the doctors. I would imagine the rechecks might be this coming weekend, and just the trainer goes down and the medical staff, and they bring back players that were, either didn't work out at the combine because of injury or whatever, or doing rehab, and they might be 50 players they bring back, and they recheck to see how much progress they've made since the combine at the end of February, beginning of March. And a lot, and you can tell one of the reasons they do that is because when you see the progress he's made in that, say, 6-week period since the combine, then you get a little better of a guesstimate as to what he's going to be like at camp. If in fact he's going to be ready for camp. And I'm not referring just to Simmons. It could be any player that's coming off an injury.
Kay is asking if Karan has a good camp, what happens at left tackle if you draft a left tackle at offensive,
Okay, I'm going to say, I've said it all along. I personally believe they will not take an offensive lineman in the first round.
Because you don't like this class, or what's your thinking?
Well, I number one, I think they're going to try to get out of the pick. But even if they don't, I think they'll take a defensive player. They signed and or traded for 3 quality veterans. There's 2 left tackles on the team that they like. Johnson said he wants to see Braxton get a little bigger so he can anchor a little better. That's not hard to do. It's easy to put on weight. But could they take, like in the second round, you come in and let's say Connerly's available at 39 or 41. You could take a Connerly and you got a guy that's a guard and a tackle that you're not putting the pressure on to come in and start. And what's the difference between Connerly and Campbell and Simmons? Very, very little, especially in this draft. If you notice, Campbell and Simmons aren't in that original top group. And again, that's not my group. That is the consensus around the league.
What you're hearing. Okay, that's fair. All right. So we did a little bit of this last week. I don't think we looked at the left tackles. Here's Tankathon's big board for offensive tackles. And then you give me a couple of lines or whatever you want on whether you think that player is draftable, a fit for the Chicago Bears, or whatever you want to share about that particular player. At the top of their list of tackles is our man Membu. Your thoughts?
Well, he's never played on the left side. Is he athletic enough to play on the left side? On tape, he looks like it. He tested like he could, but he's never done it. So now he becomes a projection. He played right tackle. He's not the tallest guy, 6'4", and he's got decent arm length, not great arm length. To me, put it this way. If they hadn't traded for Jackson, that'd be the guy I want to take at 10 to play right guard. Because I think he could be a Pro Bowl level guard. Just, when you look at the traits, I think it says more guard than tackle, but he's got the skill set to play tackle too, which makes him kind of unique. Mm-hmm. But I can't sit here and say, well, we can move him to the left side and he'll be good when he's never done it.
All right. Okay. Will Campbell, the short-armed Will Campbell.
I don't want to kill him. I like Campbell. He's a good player. Short arms make a difference. He would have the shortest arms of any left tackle in the league and the shortest wingspan of any left tackle in the league. That's not me saying it. That's fact. Just look at the numbers. Mm-hmm. You see him at times get beat by guys with length and have trouble, really getting his arms extended all the way. That's the more, because he just doesn't have that length. And he's going against college guys, not NFL players. I think he's going to be a good player. You go back and you two players, both good players that were left tackles in college. Mm-hmm. Zach Martin from Notre Dame, 4-year starter at Notre Dame, never missed a freaking game. And he gets drafted around 14 or 15 by the Cowboys. And the minute they draft him, they put him at left guard. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame as a left guard, being that he just retired. 5 years from now, he'll be in the Hall of Fame. Great player. Why did he play left guard? He had 32.5-inch arms, which is 1/8 of an inch shorter than Campbell has. And he's about an inch shorter. Okay, then you can use another player more recently, 2 years ago, Skoronski from Northwestern, left tackle his whole career, really good player, all Big Ten. Everybody liked him. People had him, the Bears maybe taking him as a left tackle. He gets drafted pretty high by the Titans. Where do they put him? Left guard. Why? Because he's got 32.25-inch arms.
Right.
Okay, so this isn't me saying this. This is what everybody in the league feels. You want length at that position. It requires length because, and why? You're playing with length against length. Most of your good pass rushers have a common denominator, and that one common denominator is length, long arms.
When Dane Brugler joins us next week, we're going to have a discussion about length because he recently made some comments.
I saw that, and I mean, it was an interesting thing, but here's the thing. It's being done at a different place by a different person.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you're at the pro day where you've got the same person at the same place at the same time doing it at the combine. Mm-hmm. Now, could that guy at the combine this year? I don't know if this year was a different guy than they had last year. I do know for the longest time, Mark Sadowski, who was on my staff, did it for like 7 or 8 years. He was an engineer by training, and he, was real meticulous. The combine wants to be known, are known for how meticulous they are in doing these measurements. And perfect example, you go back, because I'm like a broken record with some of this stuff. But you go back to the Senior Bowl, and Jalen Milroe had 8.5 hands, and then they were an inch bigger at the combine. What's that tell you? They didn't do it right at the Senior Bowl. And you get that. I used to, when I put the final numbers on a guy's card, I'd sit with my scouting assistant, Jeremy Snyder, and who's now up in the Canadian League. And we'd go through each player and we'd get the measurements. And you might have 4 measurements from a player, and all 4 would be different on the arm. So what do? You go to the constant. The constant is the combine. And I know when I was working for Philly, same thing. We're using the combine. When I was with the Giants, we're using the combine. Everybody, because it's the consistency of the combine.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's stay on that topic of length. I sent you this soundbite from Ben Johnson. He was interviewed by CHGO. He talked about arm length, and then on the other end, we'll further the discussion.
It's listen, here's what I would say. I love watching the tape without knowing anything. To me, that's the most important indicator whether the guy can play football or not. And as you're watching tape, if concerns arise about getting long arm on the perimeter, because it really shows up more for tackles that you have these long arm edge rushers that are sticking on out, and they're able to, if you can't anchor and it becomes a consistent problem, then yeah, I'll look at arm length and see if it fact checks or not.
Your thoughts on what he
kind of
just
like
said?
Well, basically what I said. I mean, it's he's not going to put it as, he didn't put it as the most important criteria, but he really kind of just pushed it a little aside, and there's nothing wrong with that. I know Ryan, not that I know him well, but I know, and I know, him being a former offensive lineman himself. You look at the people he's drafted on offense, they all got length. Especially, Karan, 36 arms. Braxton, 35 and a quarter inch arms. He took another, 2 other guys he took, all had real long arms. Nobody had short arms. The only guy who had short arms was the center from Illinois, who they took in the 6th round. He had 32, and 32 is fine for a center.
Yeah.
So you gotta use the history, the past, as part of the criteria too. What's he like? And I'm a big believer in that. So, and when I speak on here, I speak from, what my thoughts are. They go ahead and draft Campbell. Fine. They took Campbell. Is he going to be there? Probably not. A lot of people say he's going to New England at whatever that is, 4 or something like that. Good. I hope they do take him. I want players like that gone.
I like that type of thinking. All right, so some people are still kind of challenging you and in a very respectful way about wingspan and so forth. Somebody just posted, what about Karan Amigaje? He has a
36-inch arms.
36-inch arms and a long wingspan. Here it is. James says, why isn't he a top tackle in the NFL? And I think he's misunderstanding what you're saying. You're not saying that wingspan and arm length is going to necessarily make you a great tackle, but it's one of the components that
I already got the answer though, Aldo. He missed all training camp.
Yeah, well, that's another issue.
Come on. Yeah, you for an offensive lineman to miss training camp, his rookie season becomes a wash. Why is that? You do all that teaching with technique work, you have contact every day or just about every day in training camp. Once you get into the regular season, and he didn't start practicing until week 3, once you get into the regular season, there is no real contact. You're doing game prep. You're not taking time out to teach a guy how to play a position. That was done during training camp, and He missed it. Okay. So they really did him a disservice by putting him in there. They had to do it. I get why they did it, but was he ready? No, and it showed. But when you look at every single play, there's some plays that he really played well too. So you got to take the positive part. And then I go back, and Johnson said a few weeks back that Dan Rocher's really looking forward to coaching this guy. Why? Because he's got traits that no left tackle in this particular draft has, or even close to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that offensive line coach sounds like he really, really values those traits that have been a part of NFL evaluation for decades and decades. But there does seem to be a bit of a trend now of making exceptions for guys with shorter arms and just basing it on tape. You're smiling. Why?
Draft an exception, you'll have a fucking team full of exceptions.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Parcells. Okay, I want to just continue with the big board on tackles, and just to get an idea of some of your thoughts. We've talked about Kelvin Banks, and Dane Brugler, who will be with us next week, has written that he sees Banks on the ground too often for his liking, and I think you've echoed that, haven't you, Greg?
Yeah, and I don't think he had a real good 2024. Now he got hurt, and that I forgot what game he got hurt, but he missed at least 2 games. Comes back to play in the SEC championship game, and he wasn't the same player. And you can watch those games, and he struggles with some of the outside guys. When you look at his body, see, his notoriety comes back. He had a really good freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
A big jump from that. And, in the 2 years from that, he's a good player. There's no question. You're going to try him at left tackle. If he fails at left tackle, you're going to put him at guard. Now, traits-wise, you'd say he could be a left tackle. His build is kind of more like a guard, the way he's built. But, yeah, you try him at left tackle. But I'm not taking him until 25.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So, maybe as high as 20. Again, it's how's your board set up?
Mm-hmm.
But, people had him early on like a top 10 player. He's not a top 10 player. In fact, the other guy, that defensive lineman from Texas A&M that everybody was, having orgasms over.
Yeah.
Well, in DJ's latest thing, he's got him like a 29 or 28. And it's why? He doesn't have production. He's an athlete. And so, I just got to go by my core beliefs, how I was brought up in this business. And if you're going to take a pass rusher that can't rush the passer and doesn't have pass rush production, especially in the first round, what are you doing? I mean, that's crazy.
You're praying. That's what you're praying.
Some guy was on the radio. It was a network thing. I was listening. I was running some errands for my wife. This was on Saturday, I think. No, he was on with Grody. And I can't remember who the guy was. Emery Hunt, I think. But he says, well, he had 4 sacks. Yeah, but what he didn't say, and he left out, and he probably purposely left it out, is he had those 4 sacks in 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and really 4.5 sacks. He never had more than 1.5 sacks in any given year for 3 years. To me, that is a big red flag. If you're so athletic, why don't you have any production?
Indeed. Great point, Greg. All right, so we've talked about Membu and Campbell, and they are listed 1 and 2 on Tankathon's big board for offensive tackles, and they will probably play guard in the NFL. Kelvin Banks will be a tackle, but as you just said, he's a late first-round pick. Josh Simmons is their 24th player on the big board, and there are questions about his long-term play in the NFL level. And then Josh Connerly, a lot of people are saying he's moving up, but he too is being considered for the guard position because there's concerns.
I think he'll
about
be
that.
either, but he's got good tape at left tackle. His body looks like a guard, just the way he's built.
Okay.
But he's got good tape. take out that one horrendous play he had at the Senior Bowl in the one-on-ones,
Mm-hmm.
and you go back, like the game to look at is the Penn State game. He was really, really good in that. And they got some pretty good pass rushers at Penn State. So, he's a guy that I think, if you draft him in the second round, you got a guy, you really got a swing guy.
Yeah.
You got a guy that could be left tackle, could be a right tackle, could be a left guard. He's going to be a valuable addition. And when it's his turn to start, he's going to start at whatever position.
I would love it if this guy was available in the second round and the Bears chose him. All right, let's get back to that big board, and I want to show you. We all know what your thoughts are on Aaron Hersey. Marcus Embo, you're not high on him. I don't see him.
I like Embo, but I think he's a guard too. See,
Okay.
all these guys I think are guards, not
Yeah.
tackles.
That's amazing.
And that's one of the reasons that, you hear him saying, not really a left tackle draft.
Uh-huh.
There's some right tackles, but there's not. It's probably the worst left tackle draft in years.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Great interior draft, real good right tackle draft, left tackle,
Mm-hmm.
take it or leave it.
And your thoughts on the Polynesian guy from Arizona, Jonah Saviania?
Another guy will probably be a guard. Could get you out of a game at tackle. All these guys got that marginal tackle size, height, and length, but they they're ideal guards. And so, again, he probably will go in the third, maybe the bottom of the second, but like if you hadn't taken an offensive lineman in the first two rounds and he's there at 3, that'd be a hell of a pick.
Mm-hmm. I like that he could potentially be a guy who could be a swing player for you. So
like Connerly.
Yeah, exactly. Both of those two guys, either one of them, if they become a Chicago Bear in the second round, you think Jonah picking him in the second round is good value?
I think he's borderline 2. Okay. So, if he goes, it wouldn't surprise me if he went bottom half of 2, and it wouldn't surprise me if he went in top quarter of 3. Because again, a lot of these guys are going to be in that same area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just want to comment. The reason I said the disparaging thing about Embo, somewhat disparaging, is I saw him at the Senior Bowl, and he just didn't look like a guy I want on my team based solely on that. He had a bad Senior Bowl week is all I'm saying, but you've watched the tape on him. And so
no, he's a decent player, played for an awful team. Perdon't. And you didn't catch that Perdon't, though, did you?
I did.
Purdue doesn't do, they don't.
I love it. All right, let me scroll through the list here. Are there any other players on this list that you want to consider?
Cameron Williams is a right tackle. Milam's got 32-inch arms. She's a guard. Grant is a left tackle. He's a developmental left tackle. He would be like Braxton was when Braxton was a rookie.
That late, though, as a 5th round quality?
Oh no, he might be. He might be a pure left tackle, so that might push him up a little bit.
Okay. And people are asking about Ozzie Trapillo.
I'm not a fan of Trapillo. Other people might like him. I don't like him. Emory Jones is dealing with something. I don't know what it is. He did not work at the LSU Pro Day, but he's a right tackle or a guard. He's going to be a pretty good one. Logan Brown, another guy, right tackle.
All right. Jalen Travis, Iowa State kid, 6'8". But by the way, when you see a player that's 6'8", does that worry? Because it's just like he's too tall for the position.
It depends. Well, they got Monheim in there, and he's a center.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
I mean, he's got 30-inch arms, for Christ's sake.
6'8"
No,
players.
at 6'8", if you can bend, is fine. If you can't bend, you got a problem.
All
And
right.
bend meaning bend your knees.
Okay.
Bend your knees and keep your back straight. If you bend your knees and then you got that forward lean, meaning you get overextended, then you're on the ground and you become a groundhog.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just certain things if I see, you see it one time, it doesn't bother me. There was a player who went in the second round a couple years ago. He hadn't really done that well in the league. And I was doing tape for one of the agents I do. And the first game I watched was on the ground a lot. So I said, wait a minute, I'm going to start counting. I did 4 games. In 4 games, he was on the ground 27 times.
Wow.
Okay, so
Jeez.
it's like you can't play the game. When you do that, you're a groundhog, and you can't play the game on the ground. An offensive lineman, he's got to be able to stay on his feet. He's got to have good balance.
Yep.
And so, you look at the top players, they're never on the freaking ground.
Mm-hmm. A Florida Bears fan says we need a couple of offensive linemen in this draft. When and where is the question? Absolutely.
I don't know if they need a couple. They need one more because they took 3 veterans. Don't forget you got, Bill Murray, the comedian, coming back.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a god. He's back. The key is what's going on with Bates, and I think we'll know that sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Hopefully, a lot sooner.
If when they get they don't get their physicals now, but if he's been coming here for rehab during the off season, then they know more than if he had been doing rehab and working out at home. But he's got an arthritic shoulder, and he went down. I mean, I'm not saying anything that people don't know. There was articles about it. In fact, the place he went to had an article. He went down to Panama to get, because I guess it's not legal here,
Right.
to get stem cell treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And supposedly that really helped. But the unknown question is, help for how long? Is it going to be just a few month fix, and then it's going to, it got to a point where he couldn't go like this. The arthritis in his shoulder was so bad.
Wow.
So again, that becomes a medical question.
Okay. What do you think about what Scrooge says here? He says 10, 39, and 41 should be potential day one starters. That should be the goal. So no backup linemen. I think that at 41, if you're drafting somebody to be a backup offensive lineman or even defensive lineman, that's not a bad thing, because they're going to be, with the defensive line, they're going to be part of the rotation. And with the offensive line, if you want to build great depth, you've got to invest in potentially great players who might need a year of tutoring and mentoring.
You brought in 3 veterans.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you got Wright's in his 3rd year, Braxton's in his 4th year. In essence, Amagaji's a rookie again. I think they've never had the depth that they thought they had. And so you want to take somebody high, but you don't have to take them in the first round. Now, that one person had linebacker. I don't see linebacker as a top priority. First of all, they only play with 2 linebackers. The Sam linebacker is, the last 2 years, Sambord played like 15% of the defensive snaps, and they didn't even bring him back. So you've got 2 starters that you're paying money to. You've got some backups. One is a special teams player, pretty good special teams player. Why would you invest a high pick in a linebacker? They want to get more speed, but if you wanted to start, why would you spend the 1st or 2nd round pick on a linebacker?
Right. Okay. Makes a lot of sense. We got a lot of great questions coming up here. Let me get to a couple, and then we'll definitely try to get to all of them. Earlier in the show, DA JCA Adams says, I'm curious to know if teams mock other teams' drafts to get an idea of who might be available when they're on the clock. Now, Greg, last year we saw the video from Hallis Hall during the draft process where the analytics guy would say there's a 70% chance that this person will be here and so forth. So they're using analytics to give them an idea of what the chances are of a potential player being available.
Yeah, they use the analytics to project, based on talent and measurables and everything else. And in all honesty, I don't know much about the analytical side of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm old school. But
by the way, that analytics guy was fired, so they replaced him with somebody else. Anyway, go ahead.
That maybe he wasn't very good, or gave him the wrong information. Do teams do mock drafts? I've heard some teams do mock drafts. I have never been in a building where we've done a mock draft.
Mm-hmm.
You do a lot of research. You make a lot of calls. You try to find out the area of where a guy's going to go. There used to be a guy. He doesn't do it anymore. His name is Goslin for the Dallas Morning News. He's originally from Detroit. And he was really into this. And he was real close with Jerry. And he could tell you where just about every player was going to go. Not a specific team, but could say, this guy will go between 15 and 26 in the second round or something like that. And based on, he would talk to 15 or 16 teams and get a general feeling. And he was unbelievably accurate. So we used him. We talked to other people, and you just try to get a feeling where guys are going to go, so that when you are making your plan, what we used to do is we used to put these packages together.
Mm-hmm.
And like Jerry and I would do it by ourselves in his office. And then we'd present them to the scouts, and we'd give them like package A, package B, package C. And that would be like, say, your first 3 or first 4 picks. And it was all hypothetical, but just throw it at them. What would you rather have? The grouping we have in package A, the grouping we have in package B, the grouping we have in package C. And part of that is, you're taking care of needs. You're getting guys in the right area. And hopefully you're getting good players that can come in and help you right away. But it was just a really good exercise to do that. So it's really just finding out where you think guys are going to go. Now, in saying all that, I think this year is going to be crazy. I really do. I what we ought to do, just out of curiosity, is save some of these, big name mocks, just to see if they're even in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Because I have a feeling that most of them aren't even going to be close.
I will do that. I will select a few, and maybe after the show, or you just text me a couple of names of, like DJ, Brugler, and so forth, if you want us to review those.
They'll do a final, in 2 weeks, right before the draft.
Right.
DJ does his the night before. Usually, he does it on a special on the NFL Network at on Wednesday night. So, and speaking of that, I can tell you this on but because we talked about going up to Green Bay on Wednesday to meet with Kuiper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, he is not getting in until like 1:00.
Oh,
Wednesday afternoon, and got then production meetings. He usually he used to come in 2 days before. Now he's coming, and he hates to fly.
Yeah, I've heard that.
He's coming in Wednesday, getting in sometime between 12:30 and 1. He's got production meetings, and he's got to go live on Sports Center and stuff at around 6 our time, and then tape stuff for the later Sports Center. And so it would be 10 at night before we could sit down and get something to eat.
Yeah, that's too bad. boy, there was a chance, just to let people know in the chat and watching the show, that I could have sat down with Greg Gabriel and Mel Kiper over a meal that I would have paid for and listened to those guys talk about football.
Wait a minute, I'll call them up and tell them you're paying, maybe.
That's right. Steaks for everybody. Oh, that's unbelievable. All right, back to questions, because the questions are piling up and we're an hour into the show. I want to Zero says Genty is generational. You go up and get him. Your thoughts on that statement right there?
I do not think he's generational. I think he's really good. I don't think he's generational.
Okay.
And part of that is I think he's going to be an average receiver, not a great receiver. Like he's not going to be as good as receiver as Sweat. He's not going to be as good a receiver as Gibbs. Not be as good a receiver as Monty was. Mm-hmm. Monty was a great receiver. Really good runner. But I did more running backs over the weekend.
Okay.
I mean, I must have done 25 of them really closely.
Wow.
And there are just so many freaking good backs.
Yeah, there are.
And it's like, I don't even know how to line them up. That Bracial Tootin from Virginia Tech, he's really good.
Mm-hmm.
RJ, what's his name, from Central Florida.
Oh,
he's really good.
Yeah, he's on here.
Okay, then you got the little guy down at SMU. Another guy, really good. On top of that, you got the two Ohio State guys. You got the Iowa guy. There are so many good backs.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at it and go, why am I going to take a potential one contract guy high in the first round?
Right.
Because that, hey, running back, as soon as his leg starts to go, it's all over. And that could be one hit away with a running back.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just, they're not going to trade up to get him. He's going to go in the top 5 or 6 or something like that. They're trying to get more picks, not less. You got too many holes you got to fill. Why would you do that? Yeah. Especially in a draft that has so much depth in this at that position. Mm-hmm. And not just average depth. We're talking quality football players.
Yeah, I mean, they've got they being Tankathon has Bracial Tootin as the 125th player on their overall big board, and so before him,
RJ Harvey 106.
RJ
Harvey, dude, he is really good.
22
What you
touchdowns.
Don't see on tape is like move the pile and stuff like that, because he's just so shifty. Nobody gets a clean shot at him.
Right.
So then I'm going through the thing, the APT stuff that I sent you.
Right.
He did 24 reps to 225 at his pro day, which is unheard of for running.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's a strong dude too now.
Were you disappointed or with Cam Scatterboo's 4.57 40?
How about 4.65?
Oh, Jesus, sorry.
That's everything that was on the APT.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought he was going to be over 4.6.
Okay.
And everything that was reported, I didn't look on the APT, but that was everything that I saw reported was he ran over 4.6. A lot of people said 4.65. That's what he is.
Yeah, I'll have to double check.
That's the way he plays.
To be clear. Yeah.
He's a tough guy.
Mm-hmm.
He can get you the tough yards. He plays hard. He's what we call an overachiever. A type of guy that you fall in love with because he's so freaking tough.
Mm-hmm.
But, where am I going to tell? I'm not going to touch him before day 3. He's not a game breaker.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. He's a guy that you'd love to have on your team, but round 4 or we don't have a pick in round 4 yet, or maybe at all. But round 4, 5 is where I see him going to a team. We'll see.
I try to pay attention to I listen to anytime Johnson speaks, anytime Pohl speaks. You listen intently because it just might say something that somebody might not look at as key, but to me, it might be something that jumps out.
Right.
And I look at who they pay attention to at pro days, like really pay attention to. And one of the kids was I think his name is Blue, the running back from Texas. It was another fast guy. And then there's, the running back at SMU who's a fast guy. Seems like the running backs they are paying attention to all are speed guys. So then they'll take Scalaboo. But
right.
It's just, to me, that seems to be the focus, is to get another speed guy.
Yeah. Well, and they could pick up a big back in day 3, late.
Well, you can get the one guy from Ohio State, and he's a combination of both.
Judkins.
Yes.
He's
a 4.48, and he's a power back.
Right. But what I was trying to say is you could pick up your speed back in day 2, whenever, and then still get a power back late in the draft.
I don't know if you do that, though, because you only keep 4.
Correct. I think Roshan Johnson's job is on the line here.
You know what worries? Well, yeah, what worries me is, and it worries me more than Brisker, is the concussion, because he wore the bobblehead, the rest of the season.
Yes, he did. That's another issue. Guy runs down with his head down, and there's a lot of helmet-to-helmet contact, and some guys jump up immediately after that. Some guys don't, and he appears to be someone who
there's one thing before we get out of here, I want to get out, too, because
sure,
the Bears have done, I posted it last week, but more so this year than any other year, a tremendous job on not letting out who is coming in on visits.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
And now I saw a name today that Ryan Fowler put out, Dante Fleming, who was a non-combine guy from Tulane, and he's a speed guy. He's a 4.44 guy, 4.45, pretty good punt returner. But he only his best season as a pass catcher is only 31 receptions or so. But he's a fast guy, and he's a pretty good punt returner. I mean, that would be a guy you're taking late. We used to always take 1 to 2 non-combine guys. You always take them late. And if you really like him, but the fact that he's a non-combine guy and he's reportedly being brought in, that means they want to get a physical on him, because he's a possibility of being a late day 3 pick. But there's some names that have been reported that are coming in, and they're not coming in. And if they are coming in, nobody knows about. One is Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is Tyler Warren from Penn State. So he's coming in for a visit. No, he's not. He's not making any visits. How do I know that? Because I work for his agent.
There you go.
And how about this? He did nothing at the combine. He did nothing at the pro day, and he's doing nothing between now and the draft. He is doing 2 basically walkthrough type workouts for 2 teams higher than the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And, I said, why are you doing that? He goes, you're old school. I go, yeah, I know. And he goes, this is the new way of doing it. And I think part of it goes back to 20 and 21 when the teams had limited access because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, Genty is another example. Genty worked out, but he didn't run. Nobody knows how fast he is. He looks fast, but nobody knows exactly how fast he is. Hunter from Colorado hasn't run. This kid's done, Warren's done nothing.
And
not run, not jump, nothing.
And despite that, he's probably a top 10 pick. You agree?
Well, yeah, he's one of the 6 Blues.
Yeah. So, but, sometimes a lot depends on needs and how the board, things fall and so forth. Good stuff.
But
Great.
he's not making a visit here.
Mm-hmm.
They'll probably talk to him, but you can always pick up the phone and talk to a guy.
Absolutely.
But some of the things that they're doing though is they do Zoom calls, and you can stay on the Zoom call as long as you want, and then you don't have to bring them in. I mean, you want to bring them in because you need to spend some time with them.
Right. You want to get a sense of his personality, his work ethic, blah,
Well, you
blah,
can
blah.
find that out. You can find that out on a Zoom too.
Yeah.
But if there's stuff, and even on the Zoom, like they did, perfect example was the coaching interviews. Ryan would spend time alone. Then you had some of those other people, and then you'd have the president, spending time. And they had like different groups all on the same call at different times during the call.
Yeah.
And you can do that with a player too. You could have you could have the coordinator and the position coach in there, and then the head coach and the general manager in there talking to the guy, and get a lot out of it. And then who's going to find out about that? See, what I think they're doing is they're telling the agents, we don't want these out. We don't want these names leaked, because very, very few names. The last day you can bring in a player on a 30 visit is a week from Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been like a half a dozen names out, and that's it. Now, supposedly, the local workout's tomorrow.
Yeah, and I got a question for you that I'm just reminding myself. I'll ask it later. I do want to get through some of these. I got 10 questions from people. Let's start with Tom G. Derek Harmon or Kenneth Grant? Which of those do you have rated higher in your mind?
A week ago, I would have said Grant.
Mm-hmm.
And I still love Grant. I love Grant for what Grant can be. And he can be like an Akeem Hicks type of player. Harmon's got the skins on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Played in two different schemes, Michigan State for 3 years and then this year at Oregon. And he can do what Grant can do, and that's be a plugger and an anchor in the middle, but he can rush the passer.
Yeah.
And, he's got 5 sacks this year. He's just a good football player. But how about this? Because I didn't realize it until a couple days ago when I was doing some research on it. This guy, when he was coming out of high school, he was like 370 pounds.
Wow. Out of high school.
Yeah. And he dropped a lot of weight. So you can see he's got a little bit around the gut.
Right.
So, I mean, he was a big guy coming out of high school. But I'll tell you, the guy that's starting to grow on me, and the more I do, and he's not as big. He was 296 at the combine. He was 300 at the pro day. Is Nolan from Ole Miss?
Yeah.
That son of a bitch is one strong guy. And another thing I found out doing more research, he was the number 1 recruit in the country coming out of high school.
I didn't know that.
Went to Texas A&M, got a fortune and, NIL money, and then left to go to Ole Miss for this year, which is his 3rd year. But he's like, another guy that hasn't run. We got some agilities and they're pretty good. And I think he did 24, 26 reps on the bench. But he's kind of like a Tommy Harris. But when you watch his tape, they also put him at the 1 technique. Yeah. And for a guy that's just 300 pounds, he's really stout. You don't knock him off the ball. And that's just a really good football player. Now, how's the character? I have no idea.
Yeah, there have been some concerns about that. I've heard through the grapevine. Hopefully those have been addressed, and that's not going to affect his draft status. TJ Johnson.
I always go back to the one thing, but they're defensive linemen.
Yeah, exactly. You want junkyard dogs.
That's right.
Indeed.
You know,
TJ.
they're not supposed to be totally normal.
That's right. Bordering on lawbreakers. What are Greg's thoughts on Carson Vincent and Charles Lunt? I've heard of Charles Lunt. I don't know anything at all about Carson Vincent.
I don't know either one of those players real well.
All right, TJ. I know Greg.
Name up, boy. I got to write this down. Carson Vincent.
Charles Lunt.
Wait a minute, Carson.
And
Vincent.
Carson Vincent.
Charles Lunt.
All right, I got him written down too. Let's move on to our next question. This guy is one guy that I haven't heard much of. Holland Pierce, offensive tackle out of Rutgers.
No, I don't think he's a fit. He's like 345, 350. I don't think he moves good enough.
Okay,
he's a good player. Put him in a power offense. But I don't think his movement skills are what they're looking for in this, because they do a lot of outside zone, and I just can't see him playing in that. But he's a good player.
Okay. Samo and AW want to know about Jalen Walker from Georgia.
He's one of the Blues. You know what?
Does he fit?
His tape, his size disappointed me. His tape from this year,
right,
was just like outstanding, and it was really like the guy from the Cowboys. But then he got measured, and there you saw it, 6'1", 243. And so what is he? Well, he's a combo edge linebacker. But and then it finally hit me what he is. If you want to use a comp, he's a Son Riddick.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so same type of guy. Son Riddick started off playing as a linebacker, and then, because he could rush the passer and he was so fast. Now, he has not worked out yet. He's working out the 18th, and Michael Williams is working out the same day because he says he can run faster. So that's still, 10 days away before those guys work out, and we'll find out what they actually can run then.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a good football player. But it's I'm not going to say he's an exception. What are you drafting him as? Because of the size.
Mm-hmm.
But in the list of players of, the 6 Blue players, he's one of them.
Yeah. Danny Shimon's draft evaluation of Walker, he made sure to make a point saying would only draft him if Dennis Allen comes to me and says, this is my plan for how to use him. And it's
you got to have a plan. There's no question.
Always. Yeah. Because he's not the prototypical type player that Allen has had on his teams in the past.
Right. But if they did, and chances are he's not going to be there anyway. Yeah. But he's different. You could say that. But I remember, when I first started, he would, during the year, you're watching Michael Williams, and then this number 11 keeps jumping out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then you start watching him, and you go, wow. That
was quite a
plays this guy made.
Yeah. That was quite a tandem, those two guys. Absolutely. All right, moving on. Excuse me. Arnie Lindbergh wants to know, would you move up 4 spots if Abdul Carter is available?
He's not going to be.
Yeah. I agree. But what about the whole idea of potentially moving up to the number 4 spot if he's available? Because Sanders is one of the top 3 pick, Travis Hunter, the other quarterback, Cam Ward. All of a sudden, Abdul Carter is slipped to 4 with the Patriots on the clock. Do you call New England and say, hey?
If that happened, that's obvious. Would you? Yeah. Supposedly, which I didn't know when it just came out, Pelissero put it out. He had a little stress fracture in his foot.
Yeah.
At the combine. That should not affect him. They didn't, sometimes when you have a stress fracture, they do a surgery, they insert a pin to help it heal, but didn't do that with him. And, so it really shouldn't be an issue. But I can't see why he would be available. He's just too freaking good.
Yeah.
Brian Dable had breakfast with him yesterday at State College, and he's coming in to see the Giants later in the week.
Interesting thought here from Scrolls. He says Dennis Allen is just lucky to have the Bears job as defensive coordinator. Most of our cap is already on the defense, so Dennis will probably sit quietly and let Ben draft what he needs to get this team going. What do you think? I don't think Dennis Allen's going to sit quietly anywhere.
No. Defense is what wins Super Bowls.
Exactly.
And they spent a bunch of money on the offensive line between the trades and free agency.
Yeah.
So no, I don't agree with that. And I think they're going to take a tackle and an end high. Edge and a tackle high. How high remains to be seen.
There's no way Omarion Hampton goes to the Bears at number 10, right?
No, that's the same thing as I said before. I just, especially in this draft, I can't see them. To me, that's reaching to take a position when you got so much depth at that position. And what's the difference between, say, that guy and one of these other guys you're going to get in the second or third round? It's very little. Those guys are so freaking good. A lot of them are going to get underdrafted, meaning they're going to go later than they should because there's so many of them.
Indeed. J2K wonders, will a cornerback like Will Johnson or Jahdae Barron be at play at number 10?
Theoretically, yes. But I can't. I'm just trying to be practical here. It's the strongest position, deepest position on the team. So currently, I can't see that happening. Now, the kid from Michigan has got hamstring problems a lot. And you got to find out why.
Yeah.
And he hasn't run yet because he's got hamstring issues.
Yeah.
And it happened during the season. And so it's, part of the medical is finding out why. You don't want to draft a guy who's always out with a hammy. The Texas kid, I don't know that well. He's really good. Like, I know the Ole Miss kid really well. I didn't do that many corners only because I didn't see it as a real need. I mean, they let a guy go in free agency that was a pretty good player, Jalen Jones.
Jalen Jones, yes.
And then they just signed a guy in free agency that's Jalen Jones type of player, probably a little better special teamer. So, it's a really deep position. Now, you could say, that Stevenson might be a little bit of a fuck up, and that can be true. But the other guy, Terrell Smith, who they took in the 5th round that same draft, he's a damn good player too.
It was interesting that Ben Johnson pointed out without prompt that Tyreek Stevenson needs to mature in those interviews he did at the owners meeting. Right. So I'm just speculating, of course, aren't we all? But that Tyreek Stevenson might be available for a draft pick in this draft. And if that happens, I could see
the trade?
Yes.
That's you're taking a good. They're running out of money, and you're taking a good cap hit to trade a second-round pick.
All right.
I mean, I'm not going to say you're not going to go, but it's only his 3rd year, so you got 2 years of bonus money that gets hit against the cap. Right now they got this doesn't include the quarterback they just signed. They got like $10 million left. Now, yes, there's still a lot of people they can restructure, and they probably will have to because they're running out of money now.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and you have said in a previous show that you think Al Harris is the right man to get Tyreek's mind straight.
Or kill him, one or the other.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, back to our questions here. Flex asked, right? Maybe it makes sense to get a linebacker that can play in the base package as a backup, but have that linebacker play as a pass rusher on passing situations.
Well, who would that player be?
Jalen Walker.
Well, Jalen Walker, if you're taking him in the top 10. That player better be a full-time player.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, seriously, that's why. See, that's another reason why I can't see an offensive lineman unless they don't think. And don't forget, now these coaches got 2.5 weeks with these players before the draft, and you're going to have a mini camp Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of draft week. They're going to know more about, even though there's no hitting, they're still going to know more about Amagaji and Braxton on the limited basis than they knew yesterday. You know, and that's going to play into it. But you take a player I cannot see them taking a player at 10 that's going to be a backup. It makes no sense.
Not with this team right now. Correct. I totally agree. J2K asks that he's got a scouting question here. Can teams still go and meet with prospects after their pro day? I've seen reports of prospects meeting with the Bears, but they aren't listed as a top 30 visit. What are your thoughts?
Well, a top 30 visit is somebody who comes in here. You can go private workout, go visit up until the day before the draft. Anytime you want, you can go visit them 20 times if you want. No rule against that. The local kids, and that includes Notre Dame, and I think Western Michigan is the fourth school. I'm not 100% sure. Every team's got at least 4. And the Bears got Northwestern, Northern Illinois, and Notre Dame are 3, and I think Western Michigan is the 4th because Wisconsin is Green Bay and Illinois is the Colts. So Western would kind of make sense. So it guys from those schools don't, when they come in, it doesn't count against the 30. And they can come in and you can bring in their local guys and you can bring in local guys as many times as you want also. But after next Wednesday is the last day you can bring anybody in. You can go to them. They can't come to you after next, week from this Wednesday.
Okay. Next question on the board here is from James Christo. He says, I hear people say Mike Green is the second best pass rusher in this draft. Do you agree with that statement?
He's playing against lesser competition. He's pretty good. He's got short arms that I don't like. He's only got 32-inch arms. Throw all that out because he is good. He is explosive. He's got issues from the pass. And with the Bears, that's an issue that would, in the past, disqualify you.
Right.
Will it now? I don't know. I hope so.
I hope so. I want everyone who's
there's been no charges. Fine. Right. Okay, that means you can't. When there's no charges, a lot of times that means because you can't win in court. There's some ambiguous stuff there. But the thing is, this is the kicker that is disturbing. You got 2 of the same thing at 2 separate schools. So if it was just the one time,
right,
you might excuse it. But it's the same thing at 2 different schools at 2 different times.
Allegations, right?
Right. So is there something there? You got to do a whole lot of research.
Yes, indeed.
And if you're going to pull the trigger, you got to be real sure that it's just something that doesn't exist.
Right. And I'm all for giving guys a second chance, but those second chances have to come with strong recommendations from head coaches in college, position coaches in college, ministers, you name it, right?
Now, you go back a few years.
Uh-huh.
We had a veteran that played with the 49ers, I think.
Mhm.
And one time, then we signed him. I don't know if it was a free agent or later, but he's in camp and they might even got into the regular season. And then some stuff came out from his past. That sucker was gone within 24 hours.
Wow.
Remember that? I can't remember what his name is.
I don't
Defensive
remember.
lineman.
I don't remember. If anyone in the chat remembers, offer up that name for us, and you'll win absolutely nothing at all. All right. Vizzo says, Greg, people have been saying this team has too many holes to fill for years now, but I feel plenty has been filled. What holes do you feel are needed, not including depth?
So part of it is depth. I mean, that's
right.
Because, okay, go back. I've said this a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
Opening presser by Johnson. Nobody asked him about it. He just brought it up. Well, the defense, to me, when Billings went out, that whole defense changed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so right away, you need another anchor because to rotate with Billings. And you always need pass rushers. They signed one as a free agent, but he's a guy. He's like the guy they didn't bring back, Walker. He's an inside-outside guy, and he's younger and he's faster. But to get just a speed rusher, you know, I think that's a need.
Okay.
You know, I'm not safety on paper looks like a need.
Mm-hmm.
We'll find out. To me, it's just they didn't even try to sign one in free agency. So, is it a little less of a need than what we think?
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see, perhaps because of Ben Johnson's offensive wizardry, how he values the safety position. And by the way, Ray McDonald, thank you, Rich, for offering up that name. And J2K was a close second. All right, next question here comes from Lee Everyday. I want to know, who are the players Greg would be pounding that table for in this year's draft?
I mentioned his name a little while ago, Walter Nolan from Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it depends on, you know, where they got him on the board. Pierce from Tennessee, who's got some issues. I'm picking all the guys with some issues.
You are.
I mean, because that dude could come off the edge now. Those would probably be two. But I could also say I don't have enough information because I everything I've done tells me they're okay, but I can't say that with 100% confidence.
Mm-hmm. All right. I missed this question. I would have asked it immediately after when we were talking safeties. Funky Bear Down says, love Watts of Notre Dame and the Texas safety in the second round. Who do you like at the safety position?
I like both of those guys. I don't know if safety position that probably goes lower than it has to. I don't think either one is good enough to take it 39 and 41.
Mm-hmm.
So if you traded down on one of those picks, then they would fall. Watts is a ball hawk, and he's pretty good at it. The kid from Texas, not the ball hawk that Watts is, but he's a banger. They're both good players. Both really good players. I like them.
Excellent. All right. Let's go to this question. The Scrolls. This isn't a question. It's the funniest comment I read in a while. Greg, I heard Will Campbell has to ask his girlfriend to reach for things on the top shelf. Any validity to these rumors? Nice one, Scrolls. Now, here's a serious one. Gustav wants to know, do teams hire private investigators? And
yes.
Can you share a story from the past when perhaps you were involved or heard of a private investigator uncovering?
No, I don't have any stories. The The league does research,
Mm-hmm.
and you get an update every week on some of the research. They don't go in depth as much as a team can.
Okay.
But the league gets it, they send it out, and I would get an update like every Monday. I'd get an update from the league. Then the teams, if I've noticed situations where they've hired a guy to follow a guy, see what he's doing all the time. Situations like that, especially on a guy that you might have questions on.
Mm-hmm.
And then you check out, where were they training? So if you got a connection at the place where they were training, like maybe the guy who owns the place, what's he been like? And remember that quarterback that went first overall, what was his name, Russell from LSU, that the Raiders took?
Yeah, Jamarcus Russell.
Russell, okay. So he's training someplace in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
All he did was walk into the place. He never did a thing. And if you call, it's like, how did the Raiders not find this? Everybody in the league knew that he was a fat, out of shape blob.
Yeah.
And they,
no love of the game.
They did nothing, but everybody knew about it. He was just lazy as hell.
And I thought you were going to bring up Art Schlichter, who had a gambling habit, and it basically killed his career and his life, I think. So, all right, so some more good questions, and then we'll get out of here. I think I got 3 or 4. New England Bears fans ask, Greg, have you ever avoided drafting a player at a certain position because you didn't want to upset the player at that position already on the team? Quarterbacks is usually, GMs, won't draft a quarterback if they've got a starter and they want to be careful who else is going to be in that room. But
no, not really, because the perfect example of doing that upset the players and the thing was drafting Ted Benson.
Okay.
Because Jones got upset, and Jones really wasn't upset that we drafted him, but the players just kicked the shit out of him in training camp because Jones was their guy.
Yeah. He was such a popular player in that locker room, and Cedric wasn't the most social guy, is what I've heard.
I always, it's funny. I got along with Ced fine.
Okay.
I really did. And maybe it's because I went down there and visited him and stuff. But our relationship, and his relationship, he was always real friendly with my wife too, and cordial. But I'm the first one to admit he could turn you off too.
Complicated guy.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to say it.
Yeah. Samo wants to know, Greg, can you give us any players at any position that you have scouted this season that would be considered sleepers or good late round picks? I know that kid Sean Dolak is somebody that you've mentioned in the past. But
he'd be a 7th. I'd have to go. There's hundreds of names. I'd have to go through that, and I'm going to put. Sleepers.
We'll revisit that next week.
Revisit that.
That way we know you'll be back.
So I can do some research, because right off the top of my head, say this guy. I got to have it written down in front of me. I'm getting old. I got to have things.
Tell me about it. I forgot my wife's name yesterday when the doctor asked me, "What's her name?"
I don't know. That's grounds for assassination on the spot.
Well, and the birthday question always throws me. What's her birthday? And then I give the birthday. It's my ex-wife's birthday. I didn't win points for that one.
Holy shit, you're in trouble.
I am bad. All right, Greg, is Mason Graham overrated? J2K.
He's really good. Another guy that's rated one of the 6 Blues. He's a really good player.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
The only negative thing you could say, now another guy that hasn't run You notice there's a lot of guys who have not done a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
The only thing you can say that's negative, but he's a defensive tackle, so it doesn't matter as much, is you wish his arms were a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
But you watch his tape, he's pretty damn good.
He is. He's got a motor in him. He's got that love of the game, love of excelling in his DNA that you love him. AW wants your thoughts on the wide receiver from TCU back as a third rounder. I've been mocking him to the Bears a couple of times in the third round because I really love the makeup of this guy, a fighter.
I like the makeup. I wish he was faster.
Yeah.
And I'm into speed at that position.
Yeah.
And so, you watch him, he's like the guy the Rams had Cup, that type of player. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he runs really good routes. He catches the ball, but he's never going to scare you deep. He's going to beat you short,
right?
But he's never going to scare you deep.
Yep.
And so, is he a possibility? Yeah. But just everything from the guys they've signed and how they talk, everything just points to speed on offense.
Yeah. Benjamin Solak over at ESPN wrote about him that he is outstanding at yards after the catch because he breaks tackles, he gets away from people, doesn't have
big guys like 215 pounds,
right?
Or something,
doesn't have the breakaway speed, but he just manages to get some yards after the catch. D. Starren wants to know, how did everyone miss on Jason Peters in the 2004 draft?
Because he was a tight end. And a backup tight end.
Really? I didn't know that. Oh, wow.
Wasn't a full-time player.
Uh-huh.
I went and saw him during bowl practice. Went to Fayetteville, Arkansas. Now, Fayetteville's not the easiest place to get to.
It's a pain in the ass.
Well, you gotta fly into Tulsa and then drive.
Yeah.
So it's an hour and a half or something like that, if I recall. But it's not like, you want to go to Northwestern or something, you could fly into here and get over there real quick.
Yeah.
But so I go to bowl practice, and he was their tight end.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a 325, 330 pound tight end.
Wow.
And they never threw to him. And then Buffalo signed him as a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, like, redshirted him his rookie year. I don't remember even if he played much that rookie year, but they had him at tight end in the preseason too.
Mm-hmm.
Then they moved him to tackle, and he started playing there, kept getting good, and then for some, I don't know why, but they kept trading him, or they traded him to Philly. And I remember I called up Howie right after that trade, and I go, "You motherfucker!" I go, "You just stole a guy." And he just laughed. He goes, "I know." And I don't remember who was running Buffalo back then, but that was just, so let him out the door.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I went to Philly 2012 season, he was still playing. I mean, and he is a man.
Yeah, he's on a fishing boat right now, and I don't think he's going to get any calls. But
he's going to he'll be another guy who's in the Hall of Fame in 5 years. He had a hell of a career and a free agent.
Yeah, unbelievable. We addressed this question earlier, Tooch, but let's ask it again. Does Greg think that Roschon Johnson could be cut and brought back to the practice squad with all of the running backs in this deep draft? Could he sneak through waivers? I think he would sneak through waivers. And could he be cut?
I mean,
really?
He was a 4th round pick. He's played good. He played good his rookie year. Last year, he had the concussion problem, mm-hmm. and something else. He's a good back.
Yeah.
He is a power guy that you want, and maybe they think he is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why because I just keep seeing the speed thing going on all the time.
Yeah.
So, he's there. And then don't forget, there's Williams who was in camp last year, coming off an ACL.
Wheeler.
Josh Connerly isn't as big as Jason Peters was. Now, Jason Peters was a big dude.
Man, absolutely. See, the thing about Roschon Johnson, making it through waivers, I believe that every team falls in love with the running backs that they have in camp. And there's going to be so many good running backs coming into the league that there's a good chance that a 3-year veteran could pass through waivers.
I mean, that's a valid point. Will it happen? Who the hell knows?
Yeah, exactly. We can only speculate here. All right, next week we have Dane Brugler. What do you want to talk to Dane about, Greg? What are some topics already top of mind for you?
Just general.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. Me. I don't plan. I just ad lib.
Yeah, you do. It's great.
Go with the flow. Whatever just kind of jumps out. He said he'd give us 30 minutes.
Can you think of a particular?
His Beast comes out on Wednesday. Today's
can't wait.
7th, so comes out on Wednesday.
Can't wait. I'll be downloading that.
And he said it's the biggest one he's had so far.
My God. I've always wanted.
I don't know how it can get any bigger, but
yeah, I know. I've always wanted to print it up, but it's like almost 400 pages.
I know. I've thought of the same thing. I was shit. It might cost me $50 to get it printed.
Exactly.
There used to be a Kinko's over by my house, but they're not there anymore. So I don't even know where something close by is that I could take it to and print out and bind it and everything else.
Exactly. Well, if I print mine out, I'll print yours. I'll print a copy for you. How's that? All right, everybody. That is our show. We've got a jam-packed week ahead. Tooch and I will be talking with Il Will from the Three Kangs of the Midway. On Wednesday, Danny Shimon is talking to your old friend, Greg Gabriel, Eric Edholm.
Oh, okay.
And then on Thursday, we got more action. Friday,
Eric said he'd come back on again before the draft, remember?
Yeah, he did. Well, we stole him from you.
That's okay.
Let's have Eric immediately after the draft on this show. How's that sound?
Sure.
All right. And then Dane Brugler next Monday. Are you going to surprise us with any other names for?
No, because the next week is mini camp week, first day of mini camp for the Bears. It's draft week. So then it's wait and see. I mean, there'll be a lot of mocks coming out, and you can line those up against the wall and take shots at them or whatever. Because right now I'm thinking that a lot of mocks aren't going to be close to being accurate. And watch, they might hit them. I just think just because of what people say, how players line up, that they're all the same, that all of a sudden you're going to see, a guy DJ's got at 35 goes at 18 or something like that,
Right. We should maybe run a little contest.
How about this though? That really shocked me. The league invited Jalen Milroe to the draft. Now they don't want a guy sitting around till day 2.
Yeah.
That's why they cut down the numbers.
Right.
And they scan the teams to find out where they think guys are going. Now, I've only seen a couple names, Michael Williams and Jalen Milroe. Do
you think he could be a first-round pick?
I can't see him inviting him to the draft if they don't think he's going to be because they don't want to put the guy in an embarrassing situation. Remember, they had the kid and he went home for day 2 a couple of years ago.
That's so sad. Yes,
and you got to feel bad for him. So I mean, that shocked me. So that means somebody's telling the league, yeah, he's going in the first round.
Oh my goodness!
That would surprise me, but.
KQ's got it right. Milroe loves the Green Bay night scene.
Yeah, that must be real exciting. I bet.
All right, everybody. We will all see you next week. Same time, same channel. Thank you, Greg.
See you later.
Bye-bye.